Living with 10, that's been great. It's been great catching up with him, and, well, it's been nice to feel safe again. There is only one problem, though. My health is deteriorating rapidly. Everything I've been given to help prevent or at least slow down or help cope with the Omicron virus is, well, slowly but surely becoming ineffective. And in one evening I finally decided to have a discussion about it with everyone. And I decided finally, rather than rely on others, I was going to go myself. After all, I had to keep sending off blood samples in order for them to make their tests. Well, if I was there myself, I can supply the way a lot more quickly and a lot easier, not have to send it off as often. Still, though, regardless, I would have to leave James and Sarah in the capable hands of my brother. But finally now I did trust him that he was capable and able to look after them. And James doesn't particularly need that much looking after. I did have a talk with him afterwards, seeing that how he'd also, have to look after his little sister. He just got a kind of generic nod going, yes, 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 yes. Though I stopped him. I wanted him to make sure it was serious. I didn't want him to just take the piss. Tom will be coming with me. To be honest, he was happy either or, staying or going. I did say to him that I would be happy if he did go. If anything, just for the company. I'd managed to hire a private rocket. Well, I say hire, partly funded by me, and partly funded by charity. It just so happened to be one of the ones that I'd set up for research into diseases and viruses, etc., etc. I kept the crew as small as possible. It wasn't to keep costs down or anything like that. No, for any reason, it was for secrecy. After all, it would mean coming out of solitude, out of hiding, at least somewhat, so the less people that knew about it, the better. Full background checks were made on all the crew, and they were informed if they would leak any information, then there would be legal consequences. But I also had a private word with them, saying that if they did happen to leak, anything, say, my location or anything along those lines, the legal consequences would be the least of their worries. Still, though, it was all planned out, mostly by my lawyer and a few members of USP that I could trust. Myself and Tom bid James, my brother, and Wilson goodbye. Part of me didn't want to go, as I knew if I started to deteriorate and began going into my final moments, as it were, then I probably wouldn't make it back in time to say goodbye to them. And also, if it did prove to be pointless, then I'd be not only wasting my time, but also time I could be spending with them. However, on the other hand, it did give me a good chance of actually finding a cure and surviving this. So, in my mind at least, it was worth taking the risk. And the rest of them agreed. Myself and Tom walked for about 4 miles from Ted's house into the middle of nowhere. For Tom, it was just a brisk walk. For me, it was hell. We did have to keep scuffing for me. Even if I wasn't infected with a deadly virus, I think you'd have to keep scuffing for me. If anything, though, the virus at least gave me an excuse for stopping every 5 minutes, as it was extremely exhausting. Still, though, the reason was to basically, not make Ted's house obvious, but also the fact that I was in the middle of the field made it a perfect pick-up point. We were picked up by a shuttle and taken to where the rocket was. The reason that being a rocket, and not just a shuttle, as it could travel at faster speeds, because of this thing called aerodynamics. This would be necessary as we had a few places to check, and with myself deteriorating at the rate that I was and am at, it was obviously necessary to travel there quickly. Before, what was being used was mainly a standard shuttle, so development was pretty slow. Now with this, at least we'd be getting around quickly. I asked Tom what he thought of it when we first saw the rocket. He told me it suited me perfectly, at least in terms of my over-the-top personality, as he so put it. I said to him, well, I doubt my over-the-top personality can travel us through space at lightning speeds, and if it can, you should be grateful for it. He then said he'd be grateful for some earplugs. I then smiled and fist bumped him on the shoulder. But then, realising it was metal, unfortunately too late, as I retracted my hand. Which made me think, in the way that he didn't really stare at me and look at me as, an animal or scarer. He just saw me as the person I've always been, even over a year later. I didn't see him as a cyborg. Then again, unless he took his clothes off, it was really hard to tell. And it's not like I'd be asking him to do that anytime soon. No, really, I won't. So don't any of you start shipping us, internet. I know what you all like. But anyway, there was now the hope that the power of a rocket would help me find a cure to the Omicron virus. And there was only one way to find out. We were given an extremely quick tour of the rocket, basically being told that there was nothing that we needed to worry about. We were both shown our quarters. They were both pretty basic. Luckily, I brought a few little trinkets and a few little things here and there to help personalise it. Hey, no matter where I'd be working or spending a considerable amount of time, I always tend to personalise it so it's, more reflects me. Obviously, there's the obvious one that everyone always puts a picture of yourself and your family, your loved ones, yada yada. But, yeah, after that, well, I put a couple of my favourite vinyls out, like Gorillaz, Demon Days, Muse, Simulation Theory. Obviously, I didn't have a turntable to play them on, but that's the thing with vinyl. The artwork and the look of them is part of the experience. I think that was the best thing about the vinyl researchings. It reminded me, of actually listening to the lyrics of the music. And although I was able to perfectly mimic their vocals, I think the fact that I was able to, properly experience it helped with it. I mean, technically it wouldn't sound anything, but it would feel different. At least, if not to anyone else, but to me. Tom, unlike myself, had travelled pretty light and only brought bare essentials, including some very vital equipment, just in case any of his robotic parts should happen to malfunction or get damaged. I think he did run through with me what to do, though. Yeah, it's kind of like in out one and out the other. I mean, that's just not the way I learn things. It never is. I mean, you can have a, written list in front of me. And sure, I can read it. I'm not going to remember it, but I can read it. It doesn't matter how many times I read it, I'm still not going to remember it. No. I learn by doing things, getting my hands dirty, that sort of thing. Well, so do a lot of people, really. You can be as certain as you like about knowing how to do some mowing ducks until you actually do it. You'll never know for certain, no matter how positive or confident you are about it. Those things can help, though. Well, at the end of the day, you either can or you can't do something, but you won't know until you try. Anyway, that's enough of this bit. It was suggested to me that I start putting in some words of wisdom and that. Who suggested that? Me. there is the feeling that maybe I don't have many days left. I don't really know. I just feel so tired and exhausted. And I gotta admit, I'm scared. I am. And I don't know what's gonna happen. If the worst comes worst, I can plan ahead as much as I like. But in the end, if I do die before, I deem it right to, I guess, at an old age, if I do die at 25, expect to pass on a few words of wisdom, then just leave it to be forgotten, to die with me. We were introduced to the 6 crew members as well. To keep things in the secrecy perspective, we were not allowed to know their names. So each one was associated a number, crew unit number 1 through 6. To be honest, this was actually easier for me because I am absolutely terrible at remembering names. We were then also shown the course that was plotted for our first destination. We were shown to our seats on the bridge, where we secured ourselves for takeoff. Despite our training at USP, neither myself or Tom had actually ever, been in a rocket ever. Being transported in shuttles and ships and that just isn't the same as a rocket. The sheer, velocity and the speed and the pressure, the sheer force of it all pushing against you. I mean, we were trained in weak tank simulations in the past, but the real thing, it makes you feel like you're just wearing a skin suit, or that you're being crushed by an invisible wall. Either way, there's only ever so much preparing you can do until you face the real thing. Still though, unlike Earth's rockets, this did not last for very long. Less than 20 seconds, in fact, I do believe. However, during the experience it felt more like 20 minutes, I can assure you of that. Still though, then after a couple more minutes, we were given the all clear that we could unsecure our straps from the seats and be able to freely roam about the rocket. After checking with Crew Unit 1 that everything was on check in A-OK, myself and Tom made our way back to our quarters. However, on the way we passed a window. The two of us just took a look out there. It was the first time in a long, long time that the two of us had actually seen space again. It was a sight that we'd gotten just so used to in the past couple of years that we never really thought about it. It was just an average thing, just something we happened to see every day. But the fact that we hadn't seen it for quite a while did make us appreciate it again. Its sheer vastness, scale and size, its beauty and wonder, with starlight dazzling out, it beckoning you to explore every single corner that you could possibly find, the wonder and the mystery of it all, but also of a reminder of what you've lost and what you're leaving behind. The two of us stood there looking for a couple of minutes, not saying anything, not even looking at each other, just staring out into the wonder, just like we had done the first time we saw it. The both of us, almost simultaneously, also looked over to our right and took a moment to remember the man who was once standing with us, whose spot now was empty. I do wish Billy was still here. He was taken from us far too soon. But just like the view into space, it was also, I realised, the first time I'd actually thought of him in quite a while. Which does seem bad and selfish of me, but, I was pretty occupied. Or distracted, I guess would be the better word for it. To be fair to myself, it was a pretty important and big distraction. But still, like I've said before, that's not an excuse. It's a reason, but not an excuse. Myself and Tom then finally met with our gazes. Now that we were officially done reminiscing, we went back to our cabins. It was now time to move on to the here and now. I decided to actually get some sleep. To be honest, I'd been kept up most nights by Sarah, that I'd actually forgotten what the luxury of a peaceful night's sleep actually was. And frankly, I still can't remember. I was only able to sleep for about an hour and a half at the most, when I was suddenly woken by a shudder off the rocket. I then attempted to get up. Unfortunately, a second shudder made me hit the floor, and considering the floor was metal, you can imagine it was pretty painful. I tried to reach for the light, which was a round circular touch button next to the door, but when I pressed it, nothing seemed to happen. I did wonder that maybe the fur on my hand was preventing it. This wasn't an uncommon case, though. I was able to turn the light off earlier, so why wasn't it working now? There was a button beneath it that was a physical button for opening the door. However, when I pressed it, nothing seemed to happen. I then also wondered how I was able to just about make things out. The lights then came on, but rather than being, a standard white as they were before, they were a very dim red. There was then an announcement that emergency power had been activated. I tried my comms unit that I'd been given, and tried to raise Tom. He'd also been asleep, and somehow managed to sleep through both thuds. But somehow the sound of my voice going over the communicator was enough to wake him up. Somehow. He was a bit irritated at first, but then as he realised the situation, he tried his own door and found that it too would not open. We were trapped in there. I wasn't sure what to do. But thankfully, Tom, being studying this, and had the answer. You see, the doors were magnetically locked. He told me over the comms. All we had to do was break the connection. However, Tom unfortunately didn't have anything that was non-conductive, despite all the things that he had brought. However, one of the things that I did bring, which was non-conductive, was a comb. It took me a couple of minutes prodding and prying, though eventually I was able to shove it into this slight little gap between the door and the frame, breaking the magnetic connection. I was then able to manually slide the door open. I then went over to Tom's cabin and did the same. I could tell by his face that he wasn't too pleased about the whole situation. To be honest, if anything, the emotion on his face was more annoyance than anything else. Perhaps that he had just come so used to things like this, that when one did pop up, perhaps that was the only emotion he could feel at it anymore. We then finally decided to call the crew member units. We tried number 1 first, and we were able to get through. Thankfully, unlike everything else, the comms unit was not reliant at all on the rocket's power. We were told that something had made its way in, and had cut its way through the power lines. We could only run on emergency power for about a day or so. We needed to get this problem fixed, and fixed quickly. I obviously didn't want to use, an SOS, as this whole thing was supposed to be extremely secretive. Obviously, if it came to a final resort and we were dying or suffocating or any one of those lines, then yes, but at the moment I had other options, and those other options I was very much willing to take, at least for the time being. I was about to make my way to the bridge. However, for a second I lost all feeling in my legs, and I almost collapsed fully to the ground. However, I put my hand against the wall to stop myself from fully falling over. I then put my back against the wall and slid down it, so that I was now sitting on the floor with my legs stretched out. I'd also begun to pant like a dog. Tom crouched down next to me, and without saying a word, picked me up and carried me back to my cabin. He then lay me on the bed. I was struggling to keep my eyes open. though despite this I was still attempting to get up. He then forced me back down. He then finally spoke, telling me that I was just endanger myself and everyone else. I was having another virus attack, and despite fighting against him, I knew that Tom was right. After a minute, I finally stopped. I was just too tired. It took all my strength to even speak. I told Tom he was right, that I'd be better off staying here. But he wouldn't. He was used to this type of life. Plus, he also had the strength as well. He would be useful to everyone else, rather than just staying in here with me. At first, obviously, he refused. Not because, he was worried about my well-being and about whatever broken coming to get me in and out. He was more worried that as soon as he'd leave, then I would make another attempt to. I then told him the obvious that, although I do want to, I can't physically. It was taking all my strength to just speak these words to him. And he always seemed to know when I was lying. He then pulled up the leg of my jeans and grabbed my gun and placed it into my hand. He then left, sliding the door shut, though leaving it open just a tiny crack, just so that the magnets won't attach again. Just in case I needed to get out in a hurry, but also enough that I could slide it shut if I needed a barrier. Though in the state I was at the moment, well, it wouldn't matter either way because I wouldn't exactly be moving very much. Not anytime soon. What I needed now was rest. Unfortunately, with everything that was happening, that was the last thing on my mind at the time. I had only one option, just to sit and lie there. I heard bangs, scratching and scraping coming from outside, though the noise appeared to be echoing, at least of what I could hear of it. It almost sounded like something was scuttling around. I then heard one of the crew members shout, "It's here!" I heard the footsteps of two others join them, and the familiar sound of Tom coming up behind as well. A couple of shots were then fired. However, whatever they were shooting at, they clearly missed as I could still hear scuttling around. It was clearly some sort of creature, though of what I had no idea. I could hear the scuttling getting closer and closer to my cabin. Tom had obviously realised the direction it was moving in, that it was heading for my cabin. In the moment, he decided to fully shut the door, magnetising it again. However, I quickly realised this error. This creature was moving through the walls, so shutting the door wasn't locking it out at all. No. It was locking me in. Unfortunately, that old trick of sliding something non-conductive in wouldn't work from the outside, as the brim of the walls covered round the door slightly on the outside, but not on the inside. I then heard the scuttling pass above me. It then reached the air vent and began to bang on it. I knew it would only be a matter of time before it got in. This thing had chewed easily through cable, so I imagined it was going to chew through me just as easily. I couldn't muster the strength to stand up, though there was maybe something I did have enough strength for, but it would be a bit painful. I'd have to roll off the bed onto the hard metal floor. As I began to attempt to move myself, I could feel the pain. Every part of my body that attempted to move was just sheer agony. But since I was also in sheer panic mode and that adrenaline for survival, I tossed and turned more and more and more. Eventually, bang! I hit the floor. I then attempted to crawl to the door, though it was less of a crawl and more just dragging myself. The pain and agony was so much. It felt as if I was being stabbed with 1,000 sharp knives, while simultaneously being burnt with acid from the inside. This pain was so horrendous, so horrible, that it nearly knocked me out. I hadn't had a chance yet to take any medication. That was pretty much just to null the pain of it all. and to try and help with the slowdown of my declining health. But none of that mattered now. There was then a bang and a crash as the metal gate to the air duct fell to the floor. Even though my curiosity was at peak, and as tempting as it was, I didn't dare turn round. For one, that would halt my progress, and also would use up valuable energy that I couldn't afford to lose now. But also, it wouldn't exactly accomplish anything anyway. I just needed to focus on one thing, getting out, here and now. However, the pain was just so much. I needed to distract my brain to something else. I then decided that there was only one thing that I could do that would distract my brain from the pain and agony that I was feeling, and that was to concentrate the pain and agony into one area. I decided then that the only way to do that was to bite myself. Something which that I had done to Tom a long time ago. I now did to myself. I clamped my teeth down upon my wrist, making sure to avoid any vital arteries. I then began to bleed out. Oh, but the taste, my own blood, was also a slight delectable taste and texture for me. But it was also incredibly painful and agonizing. Though it did seem to distract me from all the other pain I was feeling, at least nullifying it a bit. I finally was able to make it to the door, and use my comb. I was forcing it in as much as I could. There! I was able to get in the slit. Force my fingers in. That was all that was needed. Everyone outside began forcing the door open. At that point, I was finally able to turn back and saw the creature that had came out of the air duct. It was only about 18 inches tall. It was a pale green colour, almost lizard-like. But I swear it reminded me of something. Something I just couldn't put my finger on, but suddenly I realised what it was. At least what it strongly resembled. A gremlin. At least it looked like the kind from the Twilight Zone. Or the Simpsons Halloween spin-off on it. As I was thinking about this, the crew then came in, guns blazing. They were able to neutralise the creature, which turns out wasn't actually particularly interested in me. More in the power generator. That was in my quarters of all places. I then later had a discussion about it with Tom, and we both pretty much wondered the same thing. Could the zombie and this be connected? It was a strange coincidence and a possibility. Sure, there was nothing solid, no evidence in that linking the two of them. Though nonetheless, it was suspicious. Either way, today, it had avoided a catastrophe. It got me thinking, though. Was it all over for now? Or was this the first of many? Will we meet vampires, mummies, and demons? Who knows? But I'll tell you this. I'll certainly be happier not finding out. Thank you very much.